I understand that there's resources out there that will tell you, hey, you shouldn't pay more than this amount for this particular car. And sometimes that's a little bit of a blanket statement. And I'll give you an example. When you think about, Ram Bighorns, you can go out and buy a Ram Bighorn 1500 and it could have chrome bumpers, chrome wheels, nothing all that special for it. And then you can look at something like V-Auto. And if I were to look and say, well, this dealership, the one car I know they sell well is the Ram Bighorn 1500. However, that Ram 1500 that they sell is the night edition with the big screen with the panel roof. And quite frankly, it doesn't matter what they pay for it. Whatever they pay for it, they mark it up and they sell it because no one else has them in their area.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you in advance for being here. My name is Durran Cage with Driven by Intelligence podcast. Not just AI intelligence, but intelligence in all areas, emotional, inventory intelligence, artificial intelligence as well. But today, I'm excited. So I want everybody to listen up. So we'll get into this introduction because today, we're not just talking inventory, we're talking intelligence, intelligent inventory. And you ever met someone that you can look at, who can look at a spreadsheet and see the future? And I agree with this. That's our guest today, Mr. Frank Knox. Frank is a strategist, a speaker, a dealer whisperer. I like that. And the man behind some of the most mind-blowing insights on inventory you've ever heard. And he's not just tracking vehicles, he's tracking opportunity. So buckle up because this episode today is about to roll off the lot fully loaded. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Frank Knox. That's like my invitation of everybody like going crazy and applauding right now. But no, seriously, Frank, thank you for joining. And if you don't mind, tell us, the audience and my friends and community, a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I've heard tremendous things about you and the show. So this is absolutely a pleasure, to say the least. But my background, I spent years behind the walls at CarMax. So all of my time, and many people have asked me recently, like, well, where'd you come from? All of a sudden you're on this scene. No one's really heard of you. No one knows where you came from. Well, I spent years behind the corporate walls and not a lot of time out in the franchise world. So about 17 and a half years at CarMax, all of that time spent in the acquisition space. Unique thing with CarMax, everyone, no matter what your experience and who you are, you start off as a buyer and learning all the ins and outs of a car. So started there, eventually worked my way into, senior buyer, purchasing manager, into some roles where I was managing groups of individuals that went off site to purchase inventory, purchasing anywhere from 1,400 to 1,500 cars a week at auctions. And then, the last project that I was on there was being, an instrumental part in rolling out their Max Offer program that is in many, many dealerships across the country now. I left there and people would ask, why would you ever leave CarMax? Well, I was presented with an opportunity to go down to South Beach, or I should say near South Beach, go to West Palm Beach, Florida, and was working with Lease Only, one of the largest independent dealers in the country. And when you hear the numbers, they're staggering because that group of 5 stores would sell 3,000 to 3,500 cars a month. And so I managed all things acquisitions for Lease Only, whether it was standing up, buy centers for the stores, managing the buyers that went to auction to buy cars, and then working hand in hand with private equity to build out some technology that would allow the buyers to do far more than any buyer could or should be able to do in any given shift. So roughly at any given time, 6 buyers I had on staff, and those 6 buyers would buy about 1,000 cars a week at auction. So So lots of time spent behind the walls of just learning the ins and outs of how to buy inventory, where to find inventory, how do you build a strategy to go after the right inventory that makes the most sense. But at the base of it all, who am I? Ultimately, I'm a father, a husband, a Christian. That's what I pride myself on more than the acquisition space.
No, that's beautiful. Yeah, and it's interesting because that last piece right there, to keep that in perspective in our business, it's easy actually to put the family and ourselves and everything else behind, right? Because of what the retail and the vendor side, any side that you're on in automobile industry
That's right.
can get you away from that family. So I'm so glad that you shared that and your faith too. I think all those are so important. Let's man. See, just your introduction, Frank, could be a podcast alone because I have so many questions about CarMax. I had a friend of mine who sold cars for me that went and worked at Off Lease Only. I'll never forget he called me back. He was like, Duran, we had it wrong. I was like, what do you mean we had it wrong? He said, I'm at Off Lease Only. He said, we sell so many cars here. And he said, the process is so simple. He said, Duran, I think we had it wrong. But that's another show. We can talk about the process of off lease only and how not just that they do that inventory piece that you're talking about, but also the retail piece and how
Yeah.
that part worked. But let's get into today. So as I'm recording this, it is June the 23rd, 2025 is we're recording this. So June 2025. Talk to us a little bit about before we recorded, I was talking about conversations with dealers, GMs, and the situation that they're at, the challenges that they're going through right now. So talk to us about some of the challenges that you're hearing out there, mid 2025. But what are dealers saying? And then what's kind of like your response to that, to the GMs and to the dealers that are dealing with some inventory concerns?
Yeah, I mean, right now the biggest challenge that any dealership is faced with right now is acquisitions, and acquisitions, quickly came onto the scene as really a hot button for everyone as a result of the pandemic and all of the shortages that
Mm-hmm.
we were faced with. So, when you think about that and you start, you know, talking to the dealers out there that are trying to figure it out, there's a sort of a two-prong concern. There's the concern of there's just not enough inventory,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other concern is that there's just not enough talent in the industry to go help them find the inventory. So they're trying to train people and trying to develop people, but in doing that, you have this market that's been really, really volatile. And so you may train someone on something a month ago, but it's changed the very next month, right?
Yep.
And that's a result of everything that we went through this massive shortage that we encountered during the pandemic. So the the advice that I continue to give, and I think it's where we are now, is something that I learned, obviously when I was at CarMax, and that was, let the data determine how you're going to approach your acquisition strategy.
Yep.
And CarMax had that down to a T, right? You knew exactly what cars to go to auction and try to buy. You knew what, right down to the best colors that
Mm-hmm.
made the most sense for CarMax to have within their inventory. And they got that, looking at sales data and knowing what cars aged out on us, what cars were most profitable for us, and which cars we needed to stay away from. So, that's where I've went with dealers, is really drilling into their own information, their own data to understand. I understand that there's resources out there that will tell you, hey, you shouldn't pay more than this amount for this particular car. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's a little bit of a blanket statement. And I'll give you an example. When you think about, you know, Ram Bighorns, you can go out and buy a Ram Bighorn 1500 and it could have chrome bumpers, chrome wheels, nothing all that special for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can look at something like V Auto. And if I were to look and say, well, this dealership, the one car I know they sell well is the Ram Bighorn 1500. However, that Ram 1500 that they sell is the night edition with the big screen with the panel roof. And quite
Mm,
frankly, it doesn't matter what they pay for it. Whatever they pay for it, they mark it up and they sell it because no one else has them in their area.
yep.
Well, unfortunately, when dealers are looking at data sometimes, that night edition is lumped in with this other RAM that's sitting out there. And so we will stay away from that other one because we think, well, that night edition is just way too expensive. I can't buy that car. And so we're
Mm,
not leaning into the data as much as we should sometimes. And so I think that's where there's a miss with some of the dealers that I talk to.
yeah. I mean, the data, it's interesting because the way that you started and you even answered the question, you were talking about leaning into the data. And it's very similar because when a dealer reaches out to me and we're talking to them on the side of converting customers like leads into sales, right? So we're talking about inventory. Obviously, it's how do we get the right inventory so we can sell it, and I'm on the side of how can we get the leads and then how can we sell those. And when a dealer says things are bad or our leads are trash or all these other things, it's so funny because my response is so similar to yours. I say, well, first let's look into the data. What is the data saying? What is our
Right.
engagement rate? How many leads are we getting per sales rep or per BDC person? What's the average age of a customer when they buy a vehicle right now? How much is it costing? And the data will really pull up the gaps and show us where we're off, especially when it's your own data and it's not pulled in with. I mean, there are some good use cases, I'm sure, where
Yeah.
putting in data from others can be helpful. But when you have your own data and you can kind of measure that, and then you maybe have some benchmark data that somebody else has, which kind of leads me to my next question to you would be on the opposite side of this, Frank, the dealers that you see when you're having those conversations, like, man, they're doing it right, like they're crushing it. They are leaning into their data. What do their normal practices look like? What are their systems? What are their SOPs? What is it that those dealers that are winning in terms of their inventory and their data analysis? What are they doing that the other dealers that maybe are having some challenges right now are not doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the number one thing that I see is that the dealers that are absolutely killing it, they are reviewing their sales data on
Mm-hmm.
a almost a daily basis. Like they understand, and I shouldn't say just not the sales data. They're reviewing their leads. They're reviewing all of that information to help them determine, hey, did we get it right or did we get it wrong on this piece of inventory?
Yeah.
Right. So, I have a dealer who I work with. He's in Georgia, and he and I have multiple conversations throughout the week. So we probably talk, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours, throughout the week, and it's always around inventory, and it's always around the inventory that's really, really working for him. And we have it down so well to, yep, we could go out and we could buy a Suburban. But
Mm-hmm.
if we don't buy a Suburban with quad seating, here's how long that Suburban's going to sit on us. And here's what the leads look like on that Suburban. It's not a case to say, don't buy that Suburban. It is a case to say, we want to make sure that if we buy that Suburban, that we're not paying the same amount for that Suburban as we do with the ones with the quad seating, right?
That's
Conversely, I have a dealer. I was talking to this dealer yesterday, and um, they went out and they bought some Acuras. And I looked at it, and it's a CDJR store. And I said, why didn't we buy these Acuras? Well, we wanted to take a chance on them. Okay. So that was about a month ago. I asked the question. So these Acuras are still here. How many leads do we have on them?
mm,
Well, we don't have any leads on them. Okay. So if we took a chance, we didn't use data to go buy them. Now we're looking at the data and saying we don't even have the data showing that anyone's interested in them.
yeah.
Well, this is that classic example of truly leaning into the data. And even if you didn't use the data when you bought the cars to begin with, it's never too late to lean into that data, right? Like
Yep.
whether it's a week after you bought it, a month after you bought it, The data is telling you that's not the right piece of inventory. Get out of it now, right?
Yeah.
The best dealers out there do that on a regular basis. They look at the data when they bought the car, they look at the data after they've priced the car for sale because they need to understand the pricing and if they got the pricing right or wrong. And there's
Mhm.
some great tools out there that dealers are using for that, right? Like, I could think of, my friends over at Lot Walk, like they have that information, that data that shows them, hey, look, Mr. Customer, you know, you don't have the right piece of inventory, and I can show you every time you've bought one over the last year or two, it didn't end well for you, right?
Yeah.
Agile Auto is another one that shows you, hey, Mr. Customer, here are the 10 cars that you sold extremely well that you want to go out and you want to put these on your shopping list to go buy that car again, right? So there's companies out there producing the data. The question
Mhm.
always becomes, is the dealer going to truly go out there and find that information? And more importantly than finding the information, are they going to use that information to make the tough decision?
Man, there's so much to unpack with that because what I wrote down when we were talking about the dealers that are winning, you said that they not only look at the data of inventory, they look at the data of everything regularly. You know what I mean? They're looking at leads, they're looking at inventory data, they're looking at marketing metrics, and that's I would have to echo the same because it's interesting hearing you speak. It's like it's so much similar on the sales side if dealers are listening to it as well, like how my ears are taking everything that you're saying. It's like lean into the data, especially initially, because what I'm hearing you say, Frank, is those first few days really tell the story about that car, right? Those
Yeah.
first 7 days. And to me, with the customers, it's the exact same thing. So what we've been teaching our employees that are on the receiving end, receiving a customer, when they're looking at, who should they spend their time with today? Well, Coach Cage and team, we're telling them spend time with customers that spend time with you. They either are interacting with the content that we're sending them or they interact with the digital content we send them, like vehicle
Yeah.
brochures and prices. So think about what you're saying and what I'm saying as well is we have to put our eyeballs and spend time with the customers that are spending time with us. If the customer is not engaging with the content, with our outreaches, with our text, our emails, our videos, right? And then we're sending them brochures, we're sending them to the website and the customer doesn't interact with that. I tell the team that's probably not a good lead, a good customer. Like we
Right.
probably need to move on and find somebody else. And it's very similar with inventory. If the
That's right.
inventory comes in, and no matter what's being thrown, no matter what website they're on, your own website, third party, if it's not generating engagement, clicks, it's not getting the attention. What I'm hearing you say is there's a good chance that it might sit around for a little bit and you'll have one of those meetings like what you just said is like, what are we doing
Yeah.
with this Acura here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a great point because the two go hand in hand, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can look at that lead in a certain way, but the inventory you look at in really a very similar way.
Yeah.
I remember, my mentor when I was at, Off Lease Only, he was a chief operating officer there. We would sit down and we sort of built this entire spreadsheet out, right? And it became a Power BI report. And
Mm-hmm.
we would look at that report to determine VDPs, SRPs. We look at that report to determine um, leads on active leads on that vehicle. We look at that report to determine, did someone actually come in and take a test drive of that car? Did they run a credit app on that car? And if at any point they didn't buy that car, we knew, well, if this car got all the way to a credit app, was it that the person was credit challenged, or was there a problem with the piece with the inventory piece,
Yeah.
right? If none of those things were in play, well, then we knew that we just bought a bad car. We didn't have that car right. And so get out of it now, right? If you're not getting the VDPs and SRPs you needed, if there's no leads, there's no test drives, of course, there's nobody who's engaged with that car. Very similar to what you're saying. If there's no one that's engaged with the content,
Yeah.
then why are we still chasing that customer? If
Yeah.
no one is engaged with this car, why are we still chasing this car? Get rid of that car and go spend your time on something or spend your money on something else that's going to get customers to engage with it.
Wow. What's scary is I'm listening to you say, Frank, and I'm sure somebody's already doing it right now. They're taking the transcript. They're like, this is another AI software problem. Because if you think about it, with AIs, the two issues that we're talking about, you could program an agent, and I'm sure, even your software, well, let's get into your software here in a little bit, but imagine I see in 2026 and 2027, and some dealers are already doing this, but when the technology is telling us and the data is reporting back that these vehicles or this vehicle is not doing well for us and the customers aren't interacting much with it, I could see it like an agentic and AI kind of source saying, get rid of this thing because the formula is already telling you, gotta go. And I've already found a buyer, right? An AI solution that would find dealers that might, like maybe it has a predictive analysis that would say this vehicle would sell for a loss right now for $2,000. Get rid of it because it's identified this many vehicles they can get based on this many customers that normally gets these clicks, these kind of eyeballs. We should get that. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be
Yeah.
so simple over time because when you think of how much data is available to which cars are really driving eyeballs, because I didn't think about VDPs to clicks, but think about VDPs to behavioral clicks, like VDPs to finance app, like which cars are getting the finance apps and are getting the trade-ins. So there's so much to unpack there, and that's why I do want to get into what you're doing from either whether it's AI software or the consulting side of what you're doing, but how are you seeing technology, what you provide, tackle some of the challenges that dealerships are seeing?
Whew,
Yeah.
that's a good question. Um, so I've been working with, and I'm a strategic advisor
Okay.
for AutoAcquire.AI. I don't know. I didn't talk about that earlier, but I'm a strategic advisor for them.
Okay.
And when you think about what they're doing and the path that they're on, imagine a world where the customer has told us that they want this particular car with this particular trim, and they've told us all the options that they want on that car. And imagine a world where AI could actually go into databases and find that particular car either at the auction or in a customer's garage. That software is certainly out there, right? And what if, and this is where I think the auto acquire team, they have it right in that they have figured out not only is it, like everyone's talking about service drive acquisitions,
Hmm.
and service drive acquisitions are great, but CarMax has never went down a path of service drive acquisitions. Why? Because they have so many customers that are just coming in just for a free appraisal, right? They have so many customers that are funneling through their network online and they're getting that appraisal. But where the auto acquire AI team has figured out is that why compete with CarMax on the car that everybody else is competing with them on? If I could show you that Durran Cage has not only his Nissan Altima he brought in, but he's got a Chevy Tahoe that you never knew about because you didn't sell to him. And he's
Hmm.
got a Mercedes SL that he drives on the weekend that sits in storage. But all of those are registered in his name, and we're going to send out an offer to all of them. Now imagine that network of cars. And the minute I come in and I go, man, I really, really was looking for an SL. Oh, you're looking for an SL. I happen to know a customer who owns an SL, and I can be super aggressive with that offer to you to buy your SL, knowing that I have a customer already lined up for it,
Hmm.
right? So now you're using these AI bots to go out there not only to figure out my behaviors, but figure out the behaviors of what it takes for Duran to
Yeah.
sell his car. Or what if you had an understanding of I every time we have a Chevy Tahoe come through our service drive, we stand a 50% chance of buying that car if the mileage is this and the recon or the service ticket is this amount, right? And if what if I could drill that even down to a zip code of
Mm-hmm.
people that, hey, this is where people are more likely to sell that car. All of this will drive acquisitions in a much different space in the next, I don't even think we're 2 years out from using that sort of, that sort of information to drive acquisitions.
My goodness. Frank, what are we doing? It's gonna get crazy. Made me take my glasses off on that one because it's like because it and too as a car veteran, because I don't want to just say car guy, but as a car veteran, somebody that's been doing this for a while, you can kind of see how it's almost like an onion peel where there's just another layer because my mind is already thinking, okay, well, if it can auto acquire, it can, like you said, reach out to these customers with the right behavior in the way that they want to connect. It can even get into social media if they're on, if they're a social media person that's on LinkedIn and maybe send them a DM that says, "Hey, just wanted to reach out to you because of such and such and such and such." But it's going to go back to everything's going to go back to I think even the first initial question. One, you have to want to seek this information too, right? Like because it still is going to come down to the data. So it's going to reward the dealers that are already in that mind space now of taking a scientific view instead of a gut view. Like my gut's telling me that this one's good. And I think that gut is still important to a point, but it's going to reward the dealers that really kind of like lean into their own database and know their customers the best and their demographics, and they're not trying to compete with, to your point, like trying to compete with the CarMax that's 2 hours away or an hour away. They're really competing within the walls of their dealership. They're competing to win their customers back, because I
Yeah,
think when you compete to win your customers back, and you master that, I think those customers will get you more customers. Your employees will get you more employees, right? So I
yeah,
think that's a big part of it.
yeah. And if you stay with that and you just think about, like, if I'm a dealership and I truly want to scale, or if
Mm-hmm.
I'm a company and I truly want to scale, and I think Carvana has shown us this, like Carvana, like they're not able to scale without the use of technology, without the use of AI, right? Like I think back to when I started at CarMax, um, the toughest thing for us to do and what slowed us down tremendously was that we had to go out and find the right people to be able to buy the car, to be able to appraise the car, because
Mm-hmm.
look, everything starts with the acquisition, right? Like how you acquire the car matters probably the most in a dealership, because if I acquire the car wrong, the car never gets right,
That's right.
right? So CarMax knew this, and so they spent so much time going out to find the right sort of buyers that they could train and develop. Well, there's only so many of those people that are out there. So how do I do it in today's time? There's only so many used car managers that are out there with experience.
Yeah.
So how do I scale my dealership if I want to grow? Well, I'm going to have to lean into technology. I'm going to have to lean into AI. And so even at Off Lease Only, we started playing around with this, years, this was in 2022. We
Mm-hmm.
started playing around with this, tweaking of what if I could sit down on a Sunday and look at sales reports and look at leads and look at all of this, and I could start turning my dials to go after cars that I really, really wanted. What if I could turn my dials on an X6 and say, you know what? I know I sell these better than CarMax. And so on an X6, I'm going to be 105, 110% of the market. And I'm going to let CarMax play at 100% because they don't have my data. They don't have my information. I can sell that car better than them. I'm going to own that car for more than them, but I'll be able to sell it for more than them. Right?
Mm.
So that's where that technology starts to take over. And if I'm tweaking the dials, right? And this is so now fast forward, right? I'm tweaking the dials. I can go out and source the car. I can go out and appraise the car for what I want. But what does the follow up look like?
Yep.
Well, you've got to have, most customers aren't selling their car on day one when they go through the service drive or when they get an appraisal, right? Again, using CarMax as an example, CarMax knew this, which is why they were the first ones to say, hey, your appraisal is good for 7 days. Go out shopping around. We know you're not going to sell it today, but it's good for 7 days. Well, who's following up with the customer after 7 days? Who's
Mm.
following up with that customer on day 30? Who's following up on day 60, day 90, day 120? Well, this is where AI steps in, right? Because now, some would call it automated, but it is the use of AI, right? Like I'm going to send out and I'm going to generate an offer for you every 30 days. And I'm going to send that offer out to your email. I'm going to send it out to your phone through text message if you opted in. And I'm going to make sure that I stay in touch with you with the current market value. Again, AI being infused to give you the
Mm-hmm.
current market value so you can kind of see that. This is what Carvana did, right? Carvana said, with the Kristen Bell commercial, hey, honey, when do you want to sell? Oh, great. Sell now. Okay. This is where I think this is where a company like an AutoAcquire has a bit of a leg up because they're going down that path and giving dealers this, this play in a box where they can say, hey, here's how you can effectively use AI to drive your acquisitions in your store.
Man.
So
No, that's good because it's almost like what I'm hearing Frank say, everybody, if you're not hearing it, I've been saying this to salespeople. It's like the playing field has been leveled. Like it's pretty like not saying that a store that's a 50 car store that wants to say I'm gonna outsell CarMax that has a lot of 1,000 cars down the street. I'm not saying they're gonna outsell that, but the fact that they now have technology, access to technology that can allow them to scale their own business to what they want it to be, that part is so exciting to me. Even salespeople, it's like the whole chat GPT and all this. A lot of this technology, to your point, Frank, has existed for quite some time. It's
that's
just
right.
bigger companies leverage this technology, and it was not readily available for people, and it definitely was not free. But then now you have all these free tools that are out there, and it's like everything technology wise is even getting less expensive. You notice like the AI tools last year that were $9.99 a month are now just $99 a month. And so
Right.
it will be interesting, to your point, to see how dealers are going to leverage all this technology and how they use it to fit their business to make it work. Because you're right, I don't, and I'm no dig at my own clients, but there's not many clients I know that I've either currently have or that I've served before that had a really thorough follow-up system for acquisition,
Yeah,
that could be done consistently, that could match what an AI does, because there's so many offers. Like when you think about every vehicle coming through service, I listened to a guy explain the process to me. He's like, yeah, I buy vehicles out of service. I said, walk me through, how does that happen? Well, vehicle comes through, it gets the third party automated appraisal. Then the customer, I present that, or they get it in their car. I follow up with them, see how it looks. And he's talking about, then I'll wait day 3, then I'll do day 7 and I'm like, there's no way, because you guys are getting like 200 people a day coming into service. So
right.
there ain't no way you're getting to day 14
It
with these
sounds really
customers.
good, right? Like
Yeah.
it sounds really good, but that follow up in that way is not happening with every single customer. AI will not discriminate and they will follow up with every single customer, right? And
Mm-hmm.
until you tell it to stop, it's going to keep following up. So that's where for me, like, and I look at this and I think at one point the large companies, a CarMax, a Carvana, had the advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were already looking at AI and they were already doing some things in that space with machine learning. Well, the disadvantage is those large companies, they have to move so slow to grasp some of this. And then you talk about from a change management standpoint with people, think about an organization like a CarMax where you have thousands of people who are thinking, well, do I really want to embrace this AI thing? It may take my job, right? Like, and then now talk about a small dealership. and how quickly you can work through that change management to make people understand, look, this AI is only going to help you do your job better. And so we
Yeah.
have to move fast. So these small dealerships have the ability to be really, really nimble. And look, you can throw a stone and you can hit any company that's using AI that would benefit you, right? Whether it's from your BDC, whether it's from
Mm-hmm.
service lane acquisitions, whether it's from your inspections that have to happen, right? Like there's you can use it for any one of those things, or you can use it for all of those things. But even if you just grab onto one, that's going to be far better than where you're at today. And that's I was looking at the agenda for NAMAT. I don't know if you're going,
Oh yeah,
but
it's
I'll
in
be out there.
Vegas, right?
Yeah, so I'll be out
Yeah.
there. But the agenda, when looking at the agenda, there's so much conversation around AI, right? At that convention, that's only going to continue to heat up,
Yeah.
right? And the small dealer has an opportunity to embrace it and to win and go head to head. And again, not that they're going to sell 300 or 400 cars like a CarMax, but could you grab, and I always operate in percentages anyway, can you grab a percent or two of market share, right?
Yeah.
Would you be happy with that? Absolutely, you would be.
I mean, it's to me, it definitely rewards the smaller guys. I mean, I think you can say this too as a business owner, Frank, and it's helped me to be able to pivot fast. Like if new
Oh,
technology comes out, it's like, you know, my clients and the people that follow me know for the last 7, 8 years, I've been pushing, get people to do video. Let's do video. It gets engagement. Well, this year it's been about really because of AI. I set up content for them. I'm cloning owners and GMs and their avatars. We're doing video marketing campaigns at scale.
right.
Personalized video messages, personalized inventory campaigns to buy people's vehicles back, and it allowed me to pivot really fast, get with the team, let's build this, let's try it out versus a larger company. Could you imagine for them to roll something like that out? They got to train people, they got to teach them, they got to set up. And so it's going to reward the smaller people to be nimble, but they'll have to continuously keep evolving because the bigger companies, they do have that brand and they have some of that stickiness. So somehow to be able to layer on even on top of some of the bigger ones and give them another layer that maybe they didn't think about, or maybe it would cost too much for them to get into. But that's where I see the future of dealers. No different than like APIs, like for a
Yeah,
CRM API. What I see is the dealers are going to win. Like they'll probably have their AIs and their agentics, their agents. I think the people that will win will be the ones that if Frank has his AI software technology, as long as it can link in to whatever they're already doing and make it easy to read to where the
that's right.
dealers own the data. I think that's going to be the biggest one, because part of what you talked about was like more of like a customer data profile, the CDP that they've talked about.
Yeah,
I think this all kind of folds into that, right? You've got the customer profile, and you got inventory, you got their buying history, you got their service history,
that's right. That's
you
right.
got the whole nine. And then it's going to be the AI is going to help get them that appraisal, help them find the vehicle that they're going to replace. And it's going to be it's going to be a fun time. I keep telling people it's probably one of the best times to be in the automotive industry if you're one that's opening to ideas, evolving, efficiency. There's so much to gain. But a weird question I'll ask for you, Frank. What's a topic or a question maybe that I haven't asked that's something that you've been hearing that's kind of important that we can dive into before we kind of button it up and get into our rapid fire questions? Is there anything that comes to mind that you can think of?
Nothing I can think of. I mean, I think we've covered so much in this space. But I will say this: like when you think about those large companies, right? And this is how the small dealership wins. Those large scale companies, they don't have the ability to generate that cloned version of themselves to go out there and connect with the customer, right? Like and I don't know if everyone even knows that that's a possibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for someone sees me and it's a clone of me and I'm talking and interacting, right? They're going to remember, oh, that's Frank from the dealership down the road. I need to go see him. Well, CarMax, they may do that, but they're not going to be able to take that individual that's in the local store
There
and
you go.
connect that to the community. So,
Yeah.
that's how I think the small dealer wins in this battle, is figuring out a way. And I guess it's something we didn't necessarily talk about, but figuring out a way for the small dealer to use AI technology in order to remain very active in their community, right? Because
Mm.
that, to me, that's how you connect all the dots together, is bringing AI in, which everyone's afraid of. But I live in a small town outside of Chicago called Hampshire, and it's like there's one stoplight in the downtown, like. But and so most of the people, if I go into any restaurant in Hampshire and start talking about AI, it becomes this very scary thing, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
if all of a sudden that AI is connecting in the community on a regular basis, and I'm able to point back and say, hey, you know what? Just so you know, that wasn't necessarily me. It was a cloned version of me. But here's why I'm doing that, is because I want to be able to connect more often. To me, that's how dealers can win the battle.
They will. And I think that community, it goes hand in hand to what's happening right now. I mean, that you and I are part of the automotive community, right? And so how did you and I link up? A part of it was through John Ellis, and I've heard you speak, and I've been on Clubhouse calls with you. And I think we even had some Zooms back in the day with our with up in Pittsburgh, the BMW,
Yeah,
our
yeah,
BMW
yeah.
team. So
That's right.
but that community is what led us to today of staying, contact. And I shoot you a message. I'm like, hey, been following you, and I think it'd be a good idea for us to have a conversation. What I'm hearing you say, it's really the same thing for a dealership, right? It's like, stay connected to your customers. Use social media, use your CRM, use your inventory, use your website, but to use all these things to stay within that community. So then that way the customers at the end of the day, because I think we are at some point, Frank, it's like everybody can get so good at this, you know what I mean? Because the
Yeah,
AI is going to perfect so much of that business that used to go to the person who had the quote unquote best operator, the best whatever, those that mind is going to go into a machine. So now the dealers that will win are going to be the ones dedicated to what you said, the community, the experience, the connectivity, because when everything's kind of laid out and even, it's going to all come right back to what's important, is like that human to human connection, and who we just naturally feel good doing business with. And I think
yeah,
that's what dealers keep your eyeballs on, this conversation, data, analysis, all this. But at the end of the day, when everything is even, like at customer, I think we used to do it as a close, like, hey, if the price was the exact same, and the dealership same, if everything the same, who do you do business with? And I think most
right.
customers are going to say the one who made it the easiest to buy, the one who saved me the most amount of time, who gave
Yeah.
me the experience. And some people will even pay more for that.
They absolutely will. And you just made me think of something when you started talking about the CRM and being able to connect. Right? When
Mm-hmm.
you think about the CRM, like, that's, to me, that's where the connection starts with the customer, is
Yeah.
gathering as much information as I can from that customer and plugging it into a system. But
Yeah.
what if I could take AI? So something I do daily, I keep a power list, and one of the items on my power list is to make one meaningful connection every single day.
Yeah. That's good.
Well, what if I could make 10, 15,
Mm.
20? How does that change the game, right? How many people do you have, if you've been in the business selling cars for 10 years and you have a book of business? How many people have you connected with recently, just if nothing more than to wish them a happy birthday, or happy anniversary, or happy birthday to your child who is now 5, right? Or happy graduation. Your child's now 18 and they should be graduating high school. How often do we gather that information, first and foremost, to connect?
Yeah.
But then what if I could take that information and feed it into an AI bot and have that now generate my meaningful connection on a regular basis. It becomes not about selling a car or buying a car. It becomes about connecting and using that connection to fuel my business ongoing.
Mm.
So something I thought about, but I think that's where you start. Whether you're talking to me about acquisitions, or you're talking to you about leads, or talking to someone about sales, it all comes back to the connection and how can you use artificial intelligence to help you connect a little bit better.
I mean, if that pen was a mic, Frank, I'm sitting here, I'm almost getting watery eyed listening to you speak. I'm like, man, this is so much wisdom in game. So I appreciate that because you nailed it. Like that's my jam, and I intend that people heard that and it fires them up in a way of like, you know what, he's right. I've been here for 2 years and I hadn't even thought about just going through my customers in the last 90 days, not even with the intent to sell them a thing, but just the intent to connect. Hey, I
Yeah.
was thinking of you. Hey, I noticed it was your birthday last month. I missed it. I coach teams on sending videos there. Send them a video, send them a voice note, send them a picture. Hey, this is the picture of you buying your car 6 months ago. Showed up in my reminder. How are you doing? I'm
Right.
thinking of you. How's your
Right.
son doing at the baseball game? Or with
Yeah.
baseball, I noticed that you said that your son was trying to get on varsity. Did he make the team? That's that's
Yeah.
it, man. Frank.
And what if you heard, yeah, he actually made the team, and now I'm the carpool dad, and I need something a little bit bigger to drive these kids
Come
around in.
on, Frank. He did took it there. That's it. But that's how it does
That's what
work.
connection does for you, though, right?
Yep. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just naturally how it works. All right, so let's get into the rapid fire. We've got a few questions here, so but they're meant to be quick. So let's see if Frank's
Okay.
ready. First question. It says chatbots, predictive pricing, or vivid dashboards. What's winning today? Chatbots,
Yeah,
predictive pricing, or vivid dashboards. What's
I'd say
winning?
predictive pricing.
I agree. I don't think the dashboards, I would say that's losing. If anybody gets another dashboard they got to log into, good luck. Next one, AI and inventory. Is this essential, supportive, or overhyped?
Essential.
Yeah, great one. In 5 years, will humans still source cars or will AI do it all?
5 years. I'm gonna go. AI is gonna do it all.
I agree. Like, if not all, I'm going to say
Not-
98%, but I'm,
I'm
I'm
with
with
you.
you. One lesson for a dealership adopting AI.
Change management.
I agree with that. Got to manage that. And then last one, best acquisition source, auction, trade in, or the service lane, or something else.
I'm gonna go with trade-ins.
I like it. Trade in. And that could be opened up to a lot, right? Because you
Yeah,
could say trade in
absolutely.
from the service lane as well, trade in from the database, trade in from marketing, trade in from,
Yeah,
but I think
yeah. I
dealers
mean,
would agree with that.
the likelihood that you buy a car, I mean, typically, what are you talking? Converting out of the service drive like 2 or 3%. That's a lot of lifting to get a couple of cars, on any given day. So, you know, how many cars are you selling on a given day? How many cars could you possibly trade in?
Yeah.
That number is going to exceed that service drive by far.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a mix of everything, right? It goes back to what you said. Some of the people that you did business with, I don't think they just hyper focused on one area. CarMax has the billboards, they have the TV spots, they got the
That's right.
radio spots, they got the banner inside the showroom, they've got the QR codes. So I think part of it is having that presence everywhere, letting people know that you are indeed someone that can purchase vehicles and you're looking for trade-ins. I think that consistency there and the brand behind it is what kind of keeps that stuff fluid, keep it coming. So,
Yeah.
Frank, how do because I'm going to send this to all the dealers within the Cage community, so everybody, this will be in our Cage campus course too, so they'll be able to have access to it there. But people outside of the community on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever they see this, should they connect with you?
Yeah, the best way is always going to be by email. You can reach me at frank at uassst.net. That's always going to be the best way. Otherwise, you can always find me on LinkedIn or Instagram. LinkedIn is pretty easy. Just look for first and last name, and you'll find me, Frank Knox.
The one and only. Well, cool. Well, Frank, thank you so much. I'll have all that information included with the video details when this airs live. But thank you so much, and I look forward to our community reaching out to you and getting more efficient, because we know it's so important. So thank you for this conversation. Until the next time we connect, thank you, Frank. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Durran. I appreciate the time.
All right, be good. Gratitude. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. It's always great, and I thank you for it. So if you could do me a big favor, fam, if you want more videos like this, please like, subscribe, comment, share this out. And hey, if you want to see something different, or if you have some feedback for me, send me a message. Love to hear back from you. But until then, thank you all. Keep winning. Be well.